This lesson is titled Equations and Problem Solving. In this example, we're told that the length of a rectangle is 6 inches more than its width. The perimeter of the rectangle is 24 inches. The question is, what's the length of the rectangle? Well, let's just create a little rectangle here to help us think. And then we'll go ahead and label the sides of this rectangle. It says the length of a rectangle is 6 more than its width. They tell us nothing about its width, but they do tell us the length is 6 more, so we'll just put W plus 6 on the length. They tell us the perimeter is 24, and they want to know the length. So they want to know how long this W plus 6 is. Well, I know that if I add up all the sides, I get the perimeter. So if I add up one width and one length, I should get half the perimeter. So if I take a length plus a width, the length is W plus 6, the width is W, that should equal half the perimeter, or 12. Now we have an equation to solve. Let's solve the equation. W plus W is 2W plus 6 is equal to 12. Now we'll start undoing so we can isolate this W. So let's subtract 6 from both sides. The result here is 2W equals 6, and then we'll just divide by 2 to solve for W. W equals 3. Let's check our answer and see if it works out. If W is 3, then 3 plus 6 would be 9. That makes the length 6 more than the width, and my perimeter would be 3 plus 3 is 6, 9 plus 9 is 18. 18 and 6 does equal 24, so that seems to work. But don't stop here at W equals 3, because they didn't ask for the width. They asked for the length. So we'll say the length is 9 inches. Make sure you give the units when units are given in the problem. Give units in your answer. Go ahead and pause if you want to study this. Otherwise, we're ready to move on. Here's a U-try. The width of a rectangle is 2 centimeters less than its length. The perimeter of the rectangle is 16. What's the length of the rectangle? Go ahead and pause the video and give this a try. All right, when I do these, again, I like to draw a picture to help me think, just to organize information in or on. They say that the width is 2 less than the length, so they told me nothing about the length. I'm going to go ahead and let the length be L. The width is 2 less than that, so that'd be L minus 2. And then the perimeter is 16, so P equals 16. Again, if I add one length and one width, that should equal half a perimeter, instead of adding both lengths and both widths to equal all the perimeter. Let's go ahead and solve the equation. If I combine like terms, I have an L plus L, so that's 2L minus 2 equals 8. If I undo subtracting 2, I'm going to add 2 to both sides. The result here is 2L is equal to 10. We're going to go ahead and divide by 2 and get L equals 5. But again, they did not ask for, they did ask for length this time. What's the length of the rectangle? So we've got length equals 5. Let's plug it in and see if it makes sense. The length would be 5. The width then would be 5 minus 2, or 3. 5 and 5 is 10. 3 and 3 is 6. That adds up to 16. We're good to go. So the length is 5 centimeters. Again, if they give units in the problem, use units in your answer. Moving on. Here's an example. It says the sum of 3 consecutive integers is 147, and find the integers. Well, if there are 3 of them, I like to do let statements. I'm going to let some variable, let's use n, equal the first integer. Okay? Consecutive integers are like 3, 4, 5. So how much do they differ by? They differ by 1. If I add 1 to the first integer, I'll get to the second integer. If I add 1 to the second integer, I'll get to the third integer. So if my first integer is n, my second integer has to be one more, n plus 1. If my second integer is n plus 1, my third integer has to be one more than that, which would be n plus 2. It says if I add them up, I will get 147. Well, let's add them up. n plus 1 plus n plus 2 equals 147. Now I have an equation to solve. Let's combine all these n's, and while we're at it, we'll combine also the constants that are on this side. So n plus n plus n is 3n, 1 plus 2 is 3, and we have 147. Start solving. We'll subtract 3 from both sides. That leaves me 3n equals 144. We're going to go ahead and divide both sides of this equation by 3 to isolate the n. The result here is n equals 144 divided by 3 is 48. So it looks like my first number is 48, my second number then would be 49, and my last number would be 50. Let's check and make sure that adds up to 147. If I take a 1 from the 48, that would be a 47. I add that 1 to the 49, that would be 50. It's pretty clear that 50 plus 50 plus 47 is 147. So that's just a quick check to make sure they add up to 147. These are my three integers right here. Go ahead and pause if you need to study that. Otherwise, we're going to be moving on. Here's one for you to try. It says the sum of three consecutive integers is 48. We're supposed to A, define a variable for one of the integers, B, write expressions for the other two integers. That's the let statements that I did on the other side, on the other slide right over here. And then write and solve an equation to find the three integers. Go ahead and pause the video and give this a try. All right, this is my solution. I would let some number, let's use x this time, equal the first integer, and then of course x plus 1 would equal the second integer, and x plus 2, one more than x plus 1, would equal the third integer. If I add them all together, x plus 1 plus x plus 2, they tell me it's supposed to equal, it's a sum, it's supposed to equal 48. Let's combine like terms. 1x is 2x is 3x's, plus 1 and 2 is 3, has to equal 48. Let's go ahead and subtract that 3 from both sides. That gives me 3x equals 45, and we'll divide both sides by 3. X then is 15. So it looks like my first number is 15, my second number is 16, and my last number is 17. Well, let's check. Let's see, if I take 1 away from the 15 and put it with the 16, that'll give me 14, 17, and 17. I know 17 and 17 is 34. I can do that in my head. And I know 14 more would be 48. So that does check out. This is the three consecutive integers. Go ahead and pause here if you need to study that. In this example, it's also a U-try. We've got a train that leaves the station at 1 o'clock. It travels at an average speed of 72 miles an hour. A high-speed train leaves the same station an hour later. It travels at an average speed of 90 miles an hour. The second train follows the same route as the first train on a track parallel to the first. The question is, in how many hours will the second train catch up to the first train? In how many hours? Notice it doesn't ask what time, it just wants to know how long. Let's go ahead and get a little more room here. For this kind of problem, I definitely need to organize some information here. So I use a table for this, and I recommend you do the same. I'm going to organize everything about both trains in this table. When I get done putting this table together, there should be an equation basically appear in here that I can use to solve the problem. It's a fact, it's a known fact, that when we take a rate, a speed, and multiply times a time, we'll always get a distance. If you get out on the freeway and travel at 60 miles an hour for 2 hours. You're going to go 60 times 2 or 120 miles. Rate times time equals distance. We'll just use that fact right there. We have the two trains. We have the first one and we have the second one. Or we have the slow one and the fast one, however you want to label those. It says the first train travels at a rate of 72 miles an hour. That's his rate. A high-speed train leaves the same station 1 hour later. Well, we don't know how long the first train travels. We'll just call that X. We do know that the second train travels 1 hour less time because he's leaving 1 hour later, and then he's going to catch up to the first train at the same time, so that's just a difference of 1 hour. It says that this guy's going 90 miles an hour. Well, rate times time equals distance, so I should be able to fill in this box, 72 times x, and this box has to be 90 times x minus 1. When the second train catches up to the first train, they will have gone the same exact distance, which means the 72x distance of the first train would have to equal the 90 times x minus 1, the distance of the second train. Well, that's our equation. The equation often comes right off this table when we do one of these problems. So I've got 72x is equal to 90 times x minus 1. Let's go ahead and solve this. I'm going to have to distribute this 90, get rid of the parentheses here. So 72x equals 90x minus 90. I need to solve. I want to get all the x's on one side. I like to have them all be positive, but it's just quicker to get them on one side if I subtract the 90 here. That'll give me what? Negative 18x equals negative 90. We're going to go ahead and divide by that negative 18. And we get 90 divided by 18. It's going to be positive because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. The result there is x equals 5. So, in how many hours will the second train catch up to the first train? Well, the way I interpret the question, the first train it's going to take him 5 hours, that's x, and it's going to take the second train 4 hours. So I would say it will take the second train 4 hours to catch the first train. And that way I've explained what my number is in case they've intended this this question to be interpreted differently. I've shown my interpretation and my answer here. Go ahead and pause there if you need to study that. Here's a you-try for you. Go ahead and pause your video, give this a try, and when you're ready to check your answer with mine, press play. All right, let's see how you did. All right, let's see how you did on this. Again, I like to start this with a table so I can keep track of my information here. I can just get it organized. Rate times time equals distance. 60 miles an hour for 2 hours is 120 miles total. We have the canoe and we have the motorboat. The rate of the canoe is 10. The rate of the motorboat is 22. The canoe left first. The motorboat left 2 hours later. Rate times time equals distance, so the canoe traveled a distance of 10x kilometers, and the motorboat traveled a distance of 22 times x minus 2 kilometers. These distances have to be equal because they've reached the same point, leaving from the same starting position. So the distance the motorboat went has to equal the distance that the canoe went. Let's go ahead and solve. We're going to distribute this 22 to everything in the parentheses. 22 times x is 22x. 22 times negative 2 is negative 44. That still equals 10x. Let's go ahead and get all the x's on one side as quick as we can here. We're going to subtract 22 from both sides. This gets all the x's on one side and everything else, the 44, on the other, which is going to get us to our answer quicker. That zeroes out. That's good. Negative 44 is equal to negative 12x. Let's go ahead and divide both sides by negative 12 to isolate x. And our result here is, let's see, 44 twelfths. If we reduce that, 4 goes into 44 11 times. 4 goes into 12 3 times. So that's equal to x, which is the same as what? 3 and 2/3. So it took our canoe, x, 3 and 2/3 hours, and it took our motorboat 2 hours less, 1 and 2/3 hours to go the same distance. So let's write our answers here. For A, we found 3 and 2/3 hours. And for B, we got 1 and 2/3 hours. How long did it take A, the canoe, and B, the motorboat, to travel that distance? There you go. Go ahead and pause here if you need to study that. Otherwise, that's our learning target for today, and I'll see you in class.